Welcome to a new story in what we call Amazing Stories. Today, we're going to be diving deep into this story known as the Philadelphia Experiment. You might have heard whispers of this. It's this supposed secret U.S. Navy experiment that supposedly happened during World War II.
The central claim, as it's widely known, I guess to those who've encountered it, is quite extraordinary.
That's pretty wild.
The narrative goes that on October 28, 1943, the USS Eldridge, which was a destroyer escort, was electronically made invisible to enemy devices
Okay.
and, and incredibly teleported 600 kilometers from Philadelphia to Norfolk, Virginia,
Oh, wow.
and then back again.
So it went there and back,
That's the story. That's the claim.
like a round trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mind-bending idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
For you listening, it's the kind of tale that really does make you wonder, like, what is possible? What secrets might be hidden? But, it's important right from the start to acknowledge that this event is widely considered a hoax. We have sources here, including a Wikipedia entry, that detail the origins and debunking of this tale.
Exactly. We'll be looking at this Wikipedia overview, which compiles information and perspectives on this alleged experiment, including the role of Carl Allen, who we'll talk about more later. He's the supposed creator of the hoax, and also some of the skeptics and their views.
Okay.
Huh.
So our goal for this deep dive isn't to prove or disprove the experiment definitively,
Yeah.
for you listening, but to unpack this fascinating story and understand its origins, explore why it captured the public imagination, and see what the sources like this Wikipedia entry tell us about its key elements and the arguments against its validity. So let's unpack this. Let's start with the initial claim.
Right. So the name Philadelphia experiment itself was actually coined by the ufologist Morris K. Jessup.
And remind me, what exactly is a ufologist?
Yeah, so a ufologist is someone who studies unidentified flying objects.
UFOs.
Right.
Okay.
So the alleged date and location for this Philadelphia experiment are quite specific. October 28th, 1943, at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard.
And the vessel involved, the star of our supposed show, is the USS Eldridge, a destroyer escort
Hooray.
in the U.S. Navy.
That's right.
Okay. Now, the two core purported outcomes are what really grab you, right?
Yeah, they're pretty wild.
It's electronic invisibility, the idea of making a ship completely undetectable to enemy devices, and then this incredible teleportation across a significant distance.
Indeed. The claim is that the USS Eldridge jumped 600 kilometers to Norfolk, Virginia, and then immediately returned to Philadelphia.
That's a substantial distance.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Huge.
The implications, if true, would be, they would be enormous, right?
Oh, yeah, think about it.
Yeah.
In terms of, military technology and all sorts of things, it would be insane.
It would rewrite a lot of what we think we know.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the experiment supposedly happened. How did the story even begin to spread for people like you to hear about it?
Well, the Wikipedia entry credits a man named Carl Allen, who later identified himself as Carlos Miguel Allende. He's the primary source for the kind of early dissemination of this story.
Okay.
And this happened in 1955 after Morris Jessup, the ufologist, published his book, The Case for the UFO, which explored, the propulsion methods of UFOs.
So Jessup is writing about UFOs, and then out of the blue, he gets a letter connecting UFOs to a secret Navy experiment.
That's right.
That's quite a leap.
It is. And the fact that Allen reached out to someone, researching UFOs is an early indicator, I think, of the fantastical direction this story was going to take.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So what did this initial letter from Allen say?
Well, according to the source, Allen's first letter claimed that he witnessed the Eldridge disappear and reappear from a nearby merchant ship called the SS Andrew Furuseth, and that's where he was supposedly working. He even mentioned purported witnesses on the SS Andrew Furuseth.
Wow, so he's claiming firsthand observation of it.
Yeah, he's establishing himself as an eyewitness right from the start.
Okay. What else did he describe?
Well, he described the effects of this field surrounding the Eldridge as an oblong sphere extending about 100 yards from the ship.
Okay.
He alleged that people within this sphere became vaguely visible and appeared to be walking on nothing, and that those outside the sphere could only see the defined hull of the ship.
That's some vivid imagery.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Almost like something out of like a science fiction movie.
Yeah.
But it gets darker, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Allen's narrative takes a pretty disturbing turn at this point, with claims about the crew's fate. He wrote that most of the crew went mad. And one supposedly passed through a wall of his quarters in front of his wife, child, and two other crew members,
Oh, wow.
and was never seen again.
That's chilling.
It is.
And there's more grim detail, if I remember correctly.
Yes. He also mentioned two others who went to fire, meaning they became immobilized and combusted while holding ordinary compasses.
While holding compasses.
That's right. Yeah. And he claimed they burned for 18 days. The letter concluded by stating, "The experiment was a complete success. The men were complete failures."
That's pretty heavy stuff. No wonder this story has such a grip on people's imaginations.
Yeah.
But Alan didn't stop there, right? He even gave Jessup a specific task to try and find corroborating evidence.
That's right. He advised Jessup to look for a short newspaper article from Philadelphia, dated between 1944 and 1946, but excluding the summer months. And this article, he said, would describe sailors causing a disturbance in a bar near the Navy Yard called the Gin Mill or the Beer Joint after their trip.
Okay.
He suggested that the commotion was so chaotic and the waitresses were so overwhelmed that little coherent information could be gleaned, leading the reporter to just doubt the story. It's like he's trying to create a sense of real-world fallout, right? Something tangible.
Yeah, it's like he's planting breadcrumbs. He's hoping Jessup will find something, some sort of official record to validate these claims. Did Jessup follow up on this lead?
He did. He responded to Allen with a postcard, requesting more evidence and specific details like dates. And several months later, he received another letter. And this time, Allen identified himself as Carl M. Allen, so slightly different name.
So the name shift is interesting in itself.
Yeah.
What did this second letter contain?
In this letter, Allen reiterated the claim of the Eldridge disappearing from the Philadelphia dock and reappearing in the Norfolk News Portsmouth area within minutes before returning to Philadelphia. He again mentioned this being noted in newspapers, but he couldn't recall which ones or when exactly it had happened.
Okay.
And suggesting that it might have been, after the experiment supposedly concluded in 1956.
So he's becoming less certain about concrete details as he goes on.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He then admitted he couldn't provide definitive proof, stating that only replicating the devices could do that. However, he suggested that hypnosis and sodium pentothal, sometimes referred to as a truth serum, could help uncover more details from his own memory.
Okay, so it's a way of deflecting the burden of proof, in a way.
Yeah, towards a more subjective realm.
Yeah, it's a classic tactic, isn't it? Suggesting the answers lie just beyond our grasp.
Exactly. Locked in memory. But interestingly, the second letter also revealed Allen's interest in astronomy and the idea that the Navy might have accidentally stumbled upon interstellar travel during these experiments.
So he's linking this to broader, even more fantastical concepts.
Exactly.
Yeah. It seems like this story is already starting to become quite elaborate. But at this point, Jessup started to get suspicious, according to our source.
Yeah. Suspecting Allen was, as they say, a fabulist, he decided to end their correspondence.
Okay. So he's like, I'm done with this guy. It's
Yeah.
a little too much.
Right. But that wasn't the end of the story's connection to Jessup.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
The Office of Naval Research, the ONR, gets involved somehow, don't they?
They do.
That must have raised some eyebrows.
Yeah. In the spring of 1957, the ONR contacted Jessup. They asked him to examine a package that they had received.
Mm-hmm.
And to Jessup's surprise, it was a copy of his own book, The Case for the UFO, sent in a manila envelope marked Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the truly bizarre part is that the book was filled with extensive margin notes written in 3 different colors of ink.
Oh, wow. Okay. What did these notes say?
Well, these lengthy annotations appeared to be a dialogue between 3 individuals, one named Jemmy and the other 2 labeled Mr. A and Mr. B by the ONR.
Okay.
These notes discussed, various topics from Jessup's book, including spacefaring people, and seemed to debate his theories.
Oh,
Yeah, and the capitalization and punctuation was described as unusual.
right.
It was a very, very peculiar document.
And how did this relate back to the Philadelphia experiment?
Well, the notes contained oblique references to the Philadelphia experiment in a way that suggested prior or superior knowledge. For instance, Mr. B supposedly stated about one of Jessup's theories that he doesn't know, can't know, only guesses. Jessup, based on the writing style and comparisons to the letters he had received, identified Mr. A as likely being Carl Allen. However, the Wikipedia entry also mentions the possibility that all the annotations were made by the same person using different pens. So, the authorship itself is still somewhat in question.
Right. So the ONR receives this annotated book, and they think Jessup might know something about it. That's a pretty curious reaction for a government agency.
It is, yeah. Following this, the ONR informed Jessup that the address on Allende's letters was traced back to an abandoned farmhouse.
Oh, okay.
They also revealed that a research company called Varro Corporation was preparing a limited print run of Jessup's book, including the 2 Allen letters and these strange annotations.
So they're basically publishing this,
Yeah, it's very strange.
even though it seems like, a bunch of scribbles and crazy ideas.
Yeah. Around 100 copies were apparently made,
Mhm.
and 3 were sent to Jessup himself.
That's so bizarre. Why would the ONR be interested in publishing this, even in a limited run?
Yeah.
It seems to lend a strange sort of credibility to this whole thing in a way, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. That's a good question. And, the source doesn't offer a definitive answer.
Yeah,
One could speculate, maybe they were trying to understand the source of the information or perhaps even assess any potential security risks, however unlikely. But yeah, it remains one of the more puzzling aspects of this whole narrative.
Yeah, it's certainly a bizarre episode in this strange tale.
Yeah.
And sadly, Jessup's story has a tragic end, doesn't it?
It does. Jessup reportedly tried to capitalize on the renewed interest,
Okay.
but his subsequent book didn't sell well, and his publisher rejected further work. He also faced personal difficulties, including losing his job and his wife leaving him. Friends described him as unstable. After a car accident and a slow recovery, Morris Jessup died by suicide in April 1959 at the age of 59.
That's a very sad ending. It makes you wonder how much this whole affair with Allen and the annotated book contributed to his state of mind.
It does, yeah.
So now let's circle back to Carl Allen, the man at the center of this alleged hoax. What more do we know about him that might be relevant?
Well, the Wikipedia entry provides some biographical details. His real name was Carl Meredith Allen. He was born in 1925 and passed away in 1994. He was a U.S. merchant marine sailor and is identified as the creator of the Philadelphia experiment hoax.
Okay.
He had a somewhat unconventional background, reportedly dropped out of elementary school. He did enlist in the U.S. Navy in 1942, but was discharged in 1943 for psychiatric issues.
Okay.
He then served in the Merchant Marine from 1943 to 1952 and is described as living a vagabond lifestyle afterward.
So a somewhat transient life, it sounds like. And the source mentions he used multiple names,
He did, yeah.
which is, that's always a bit of a red flag, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not necessarily a good sign. It says he used at least 5 different names throughout his life. Crucially, the entry confirms that Allen admitted to writing the letters to Jessup and creating the annotations in the book that was sent to the ONR.
Oh, wow.
He eventually died in a mental institution at the age of 68.
So the originator of this incredible tale had a history of psychological issues and ultimately admitted to fabricating the story. That seems like a pretty strong indication that the Philadelphia experiment, as described, never happened.
It certainly points in that direction.
Yeah.
However, the Wikipedia entry also offers a potential explanation for some of the confusion that might have fueled the initial claims.
Okay.
This comes from an account by a former USS Eldridge sailor in 1992.
Oh, interesting. A first-hand account, even if it's years later. What did this sailor recount?
This former sailor recounted an incident in a bar one night. He and another sailor, both underage, were having a couple of beers. The trouble started when some sailors began bragging about the Eldridge's secret equipment, mentioning radar, sonar, special screws, and a new compass, and were told to be quiet. When things escalated, the waitresses escorted the 2 underage sailors out the back door and later denied seeing them. This happened around 2 a.m.
So you've got the scene of sailors in a bar, maybe exaggerating the capabilities of their ship a little bit.
Right.
Okay. A bar fight, some underage drinking. How does this seemingly unrelated incident tie into the teleportation claims?
Well, the crucial part is the timeline. According to the sailor, the Eldridge had already left the harbor at 11 p.m. that night. Someone looking for the ship in the harbor later might have noticed that it was gone. Furthermore, the Eldridge was back in Philadelphia Harbor the next morning, which on the surface seems impossible, right?
Right. That would normally be a significant journey, several days at least.
Yeah, at least.
How could they have made it there and back so quickly?
Well, the explanation provided, and this is key, is that the Navy likely used the Chesapeake-Delaware Canal, which is this inland waterway. This route would have allowed for a much faster transit, around 6 hours between Philadelphia and the Atlantic, bypassing the longer 2-day route that, merchant ships would typically take, as well as avoiding submarine nets and mines. So it wasn't teleportation, but, clever use of existing infrastructure.
So the ship did move, relatively quickly, but not through some fantastical technology.
Right.
It was a mundane, albeit less known, route
Right.
that could easily be misinterpreted by someone who wasn't aware of it.
Exactly. This could potentially explain how Allen, perhaps witnessing the Eldridge's absence from the harbor one night and its quick return, misinterpreted or embellished this real but ordinary movement of the ship into something far more extraordinary. And, the bragging about secret equipment in the bar might have also contributed to this, to the idea that something truly unusual was happening with the Eldridge in the minds of those who heard the rumors.
That's a really interesting and plausible explanation for at least part of the mystery.
Hmm.
A bar fight, some underage drinking, a misunderstanding of naval logistics could have been the spark for this whole enduring legend.
It really highlights how easily rumors and misinterpretations can take root,
Yeah,
especially when mixed with a desire for something extraordinary to be true.
right. Tapping into our innate, human curiosity about the unknown.
Absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you're enjoying the content, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, if there's a specific topic you'd like us to talk about, let us know in the comments. Thank you, and let's keep going. So bringing it all together, what are the key takeaways from our deep dive into the Philadelphia experiment?
Well, we've explored this fascinating, albeit likely fictional, tale of the Philadelphia experiment.
Right.
We looked at the initial claims of invisibility and teleportation, the central role of Carl Allen in bringing the story to public attention, and the subsequent strange involvement of the ONR with the annotated book.
And the overwhelming evidence points to this being a hoax.
Absolutely. The Wikipedia entry strongly suggests that the Philadelphia experiment is a hoax, likely fueled by misinterpretations, exaggerations, and perhaps, as Robert A. Gorman put it, Project Gullibility. The biographical details of Carl Allen, including his admission to fabricating the story and his history of psychiatric issues, further support this conclusion.
Yet, despite all this, the story endures in the public consciousness. Why do you think that is?
Well, the allure of secret military technology, the tantalizing mystery of sudden disappearance and reappearance, and the tangential connections to famous figures like Einstein and Tesla,
Oh, right.
all contribute to the legend's longevity. It taps into our fascination with the unknown and the possibility of scientific breakthroughs that defy our current understanding of physics and reality.
So what does this all mean, having taken this deep dive with us? Perhaps the real experiment wasn't about making a ship disappear, but about how easily a captivating story, even one lacking credible evidence, can take hold and travel through our collective consciousness.
That's a good point.
What other amazing stories might have similar, less extraordinary origins?
Yeah, makes you wonder.
It really does.